God, this is awesome. I'm somebody else. It's like almost as if my issues disappeared. It's just like, this is awesome. I'm going to do this. And so after like a few days of, of me figuring out that, oh my God, I might be trans. I set an appointment with Planned Parenthood, which I know a lot of people do to get hormones because it's easy, which I also think it's a problem that it's too easy, which also I will get into later. I set an appointment with them, and I had like a 2-week period of in between where I really kind of got to think about things, but I was so impatient, I was so impulsive, I was just so convinced that this is gonna fix me, this is gonna make everything better. Just those 2 weeks went by like that, and then I mean the next thing I knew, I was on hormones. And I think another thing, I kind of cheated. With the whole family explaining, I was like, oh, I think I'm a guy. It's like I told my parents, and they were cool with it. I got really lucky. I mean, my family in general is pretty supportive. And I was pretty antisocial, so I had like a really small friend group, but I kind of got off easy because right in the period where I was thinking about detransitioning, I was also thinking about moving, and I moved cities. I was like 4.5 hours away from anybody I knew. I moved cities. Where I am now, at first I moved, I didn't have any family or friends here. Like I didn't know anybody. I just up and left to someplace I had never been before, and I was like, okay, I'm gonna make this work. And I played it kind of smart. I'm kind of proud of myself. Like the first day that I took hormones, I think it was September 29th, and was my first shot, and then I moved to where I am now, to Spokane. I live in Spokane. And then I moved, like, I think it was September 30th. And I just requested a job transfer, like new job, new everything. I didn't know anybody. And so right when I moved, I just introduced myself as Ryan, because I was on hormones. And so from the very beginning, I never had to explain to anybody, any of my coworkers, any of my friends that I was transitioning. I never had to deal with people misgendering me because they were so used to who I was before. I never had to deal with the awkward, or, you know, it's like when you first explain, you never know how somebody's going to react when you're saying that. I mean, it's like they're your coworkers, but at the same time, it's like, shit, I'm like, am I going to have issues at work? You know, it's just, I never had to deal with that, which I was really lucky, but it's also because I moved, and I feel like I kind of cheated. But, so I moved, and then I passed after about 2 months, so I didn't really have any issues with that. My voice dropped, of course, and of course people misgendered me at first, because I was very, very new trans, you know, I just transitioned. But, you know, it was kind of smooth sailing for probably about a year and a half. Yeah, and like I said, I didn't have any issues, but something that I will say that I've tried to look online for it, I've never found anything, like on like these trans forums and communities and discussions, is that, yes, I presented as a guy. I might be able to do some fancy editing and pop up like a picture there of what I looked like and how I passed. But yeah, I was identifying as a guy. My voice was dropped. I didn't get misgendered by random people. Like, I passed, you know, I was fine. But also, like, you know, like the voice in your head, it's like how I thought of myself. Like, I would almost misgender myself. I mean, it was confusing for me, and I tried to look it up, and I couldn't find anything really that kind of explained what I was going through. And anytime I had asked anybody about it, they was like, "Oh, just give it time. You know, it'll sort it out with time." But I mean, that's never something that really did. Like, it's almost as if my voice, my physical voice, got deeper. And I might just sound totally nuts, and nobody else has this issue. It's just me. But I'm gonna say it anyways. But like the voice, you know, it's like that in your head that you think with. What still sounded feminine. It was my old voice and the way I thought of myself. Like when I dreamed I was a chick, I wasn't a guy. And just kind of things like that. It's just like subconsciously I still thought of myself as my old self, as a woman, instead of a guy. And that was something that I really struggled with for a long time when I was identifying as a guy, because I was like, well, shit, like, why isn't this changing? Like, everything else seems fine, everything's going fine. Why is my lizard brain struggling with this? And so that's something that I just also dealt with, that I felt might have been an early sign that maybe this isn't for me. But afterwards, I mean, some of those things I just decided not to think about, honestly, and I know that's not very healthy. I didn't talk to a therapist ever. I had really bad experiences with therapy from a young age. And so I never really thought that talking to somebody was a good idea. And I'm not too sure on that, but that kind of just reinforces the idea that I had never actually sought professional medical help for some of these issues. And also number two, something else that I had issues with, that was probably a sign. I was never comfortable with sort of like the whole relationship dynamic. I was fine to try and like date, but at the same time, I didn't know how. Because like when I was a cis woman, it's just like I knew how to date, you know, but when I transitioned, I was like, okay, I'm a guy now, but I wasn't comfortable dating a guy as a guy and being in a gay relationship, although that's fine. It's just in my head, thinking of myself as a guy dating a guy, that didn't compute. I wasn't attracted to that idea, if that makes sense. But at the same time, I couldn't see myself as a trans guy dating a chick either, because I also wasn't I mean, I was attracted to women, but I wasn't attracted to women. And then this kind of leads up to the realization that transitioning did not change my sexuality, which I realized afterwards, you know, a little bit too late. And it's not that I thought that, well, I guess I won't say that. I did think that. I had hoped that transitioning would fix that area of my life that I was having issues with, the whole relationship thing. And that didn't fix anything. I remember specifically having issues. That was probably the main cause of my detransition, actually, was just the idea. Like I couldn't figure it out. How that was supposed to work. But yeah, so I kind of, consulting the notes, I refused to think about it, because I was committed. I'm like, okay, I'm on hormones, I'm living, like, everybody knows me as Brian now. It's like, I'm fully transitioned. Every part of my life has completely changed. Like, I'm sticking with it. I've legally changed my name. I've done all of this work. And honestly, I didn't really think about it, because I was afraid that if I thought more about how this doesn't feel right, that I would realize that I was wrong. And then I was afraid to realize that I was wrong, because that would mean that I had made a horrible mistake, and that I had changed, like, irreversibly changed certain aspects of my life. And so, yeah, for like the whole year and a half, well, more like a year, I didn't really have those thoughts. Like, everything was hunky-dory. I was fine for probably about 6 months. Until those kind of thoughts of like, what if I made a mistake, or what if this wasn't the right idea, kind of popped into my head. But like, as soon as they did, I shut it down. I was like, do not think about it. Like, those are not productive thoughts. You're not detransitioning anyways. It wouldn't work out. Just don't think about it. And I did that for probably about a year and a half. So after about a year and a half, it's just, I don't really even know what happened. I was just sitting at home. I had gotten off work, and I had just been thinking about it. And it's just, I'd probably been thinking about it for a couple of days in a row. Just this persistent nagging feeling of just, like, this something doesn't add up. Like, this just doesn't feel right. I didn't know what to do about it. And then I was like, okay, I'm going to sit down, and I'm going to think about what about this doesn't feel right. It's like, okay, there's obviously something that I need to address, so I'm gonna figure it out. And so I sat down and I really thought about it. And then I kind of asked myself, it's just like, do I want to go back? I mean, if I could, in a perfect world, would I, like, do I want to go back to being a chick? And my first kind of warning sign that I might not be trans in the first place was that my answer wasn't immediately no. I was just like, well, if I could fix my other issues, I would. And then I'd think, like, well, I mean, if I could, and constantly I'd have thoughts like where, man, it's like I wish I could clone myself and have it both ways. You know, it's like I wish I could be a chick and a guy and, you know, go back and forth, you know, so I could have both. Because there were certain aspects of being a woman that I really missed. Like, I mean, I would just catch myself thinking, and it's like, oh my God, it's like women, they can do so much. I miss doing things with my hair. I missed doing my makeup. I missed looking good. That was what really probably sparked everything else. Was I just wasn't satisfied with how I looked as a guy. Because as a chick, I mean, I passed pretty well. I thought I looked decent. I mean, I looked good a couple times, you know. It's like I don't want to say that I was the most attractive person in the world, but, you know, I was happy with what I looked. And like I stated before, I didn't have any dysphoria. Like, I wasn't unsatisfied with how I physically looked. And that's something that I kind of just realized. I was like, man, it's just like, I never had issues with that in the first place. And that's also then what I realized after that was that with the whole asexual thing, transitioning did not fix my problems. I was still, because I had tried to go on some dates and I had tried to work something out, and it just was not working. I just couldn't figure it out. And it was just the same issues that I was having before. And it didn't fix anything. It didn't change my sexuality. It didn't change what I thought towards other people. It didn't make me more romantic. It didn't make me want to hang out with other people anymore. Like, I was still the same antisocial, you know, kind of hermit that I was. And I was fine with that. But being a guy just, I mean, it was fine, but it's just, it wasn't what I had expected. Let's just say that. And so then that kind of lit up kind of the light bulb, being like, oh my God, what if I really fucked up? I might have seriously made a mistake. And then, because I had finally allowed myself to think about it, it's like, okay, what if I really did screw up? Like, what if I'm not actually trans? Like, I've changed every aspect of my life to essentially be a completely different person. And if I were to admit that I'm wrong, then, I mean, I fucked up. Like, I've screwed up royally. And then afterwards, I mean, you really have to think, or I mean, I had to think, it's like, okay, well, now that I've admitted that, okay, maybe I'm not trans, I've screwed up. Like, what am I going to do? Am I going to detransition? I mean, my voice was dropped, and then I was like, well, shit, I mean, if I detransition now, I'd essentially have to go through what every other trans woman has gone through. I mean, I had started to grow facial hair. I caught it pretty early on. I don't have a beard. I don't have to deal with that, but there were some, I have to shave. But just the thoughts of like, well, shit, now I've permanently changed my parts of my body, some things that are never going to go back to the way they were. And that part that really freaked me out. And the whole possibly not passing thing, my voice was a huge thing too. That was something that I almost considered, knowing that I'm not trans, but still identifying as a guy anyways, because the idea of transitioning and then not passing as a woman either, even though I am biologically a female, was not appealing. I didn't want to do that. And so I took probably a week or two to think about it, and just really look up, just get more information on it. And I was thinking, it was like, I can't be the only one who's done this. I was like, there has to be some sort of information out there. And I looked, there was some, videos, definitely really good ones. I can't remember the name of the one chick that I watch on YouTube. She's probably the most watched video about detransition. Like if you Google detransition, her video will probably pop up. She's got like bob hair, almost like me, but blonde. If you Google it, you'll probably know who I'm talking about. And I just don't remember her name. I should have wrote it down, but that, and I looked at it. She's got a lot of really good content that helped me out a lot. But also something that threw me was that her voice was deeper, and she sounds fine. But just for me, the idea of just detransitioning was kind of like, it's like a foreign thought. I mean, it was kind of scary. I just didn't know what I was going to do. But in the end, I took a few weeks to think about it. And in that, like, what I'd also suggest is if you're confused and you're thinking about detransitioning, be it whether you're a guy or a girl, I mean, I would experiment around. It's what I did. I bought some makeup, and I made up a total bullshit excuse to my coworker, because y'all went on a roller coaster ride just now. Apologies. Gotta set this up again. Well, I'm just gonna hold it like there. Okay. But also, and I made up like a bullshit excuse to my coworker, because a lot of my coworkers, I passed the ball that whenever we got new people in, they didn't know that I was trans, and I didn't have a problem with talking about it. Like, if somebody knew that I was trans and they had a question, I'd be more than happy to, like, I wasn't shy, I wasn't self-conscious. It's like I'll just say it. And I'd rather people ask me an embarrassing question and have me give them the right answer and kind of have them be correctly informed than have them go around thinking something that's not right. It's just like, just ask me and I'll tell you. Just don't, or go around thinking something and then telling somebody else something and having just everybody think the wrong thing. So I never had an issue with that. But and so where I was, remember what I was talking about, how I can't keep a cohesive thought for more than like 30 seconds? I messed around with it. I was like, okay, well, if I am detransitioning back to a woman, I wanted to know what I would look like. I was afraid of not passing, of looking weird, and I was like, oh my god, what am I going to do about this? So I went and I bought some makeup, and I told my coworker, because this is COVID-19 season right now, we're all quarantined. I was like, well, I gotta get my guy. I was like, oh, well, I got some, my roommates are challenging me or something to like a makeup challenge, and or I said it was for my roommate or something. Or whatever reason you can come up with if you don't feel comfortable just saying you're buying makeup for yourself. It's just bullshit. I mean, it's like, you don't know anybody anything else. Like, you don't know anybody in explanations. Like, you don't know people. So I bought a bunch of makeup, and then I went and I did my makeup. I remember, so I was in the bathroom for like half an hour at like 2 o'clock in the morning, because I was like, oh my fucking god. Like, none of my roommates knew that I was transgender either, which, I mean, I might make a separate video on like living incognito with roommates who you live with, and kind of how to do that. But yeah, so I sat in the bathroom, I locked the door. I was thinking, oh my god, like, none of my roommates know that I'm trans. They all think that I'm a dude. The worst thing that I could possibly think of in that moment was having somebody walk in with me doing my makeup, and they'd be like, what the fuck are you doing? Because they were all very, very straight guys. Which was another kind of issue that I was having with detransition, which I'll get into later. But yeah, experiment around with that stuff. I mean, if you're really thinking about detransitioning and you're wondering, I mean, it's like, makeup can do miracles, which I learned really early on. And I already knew that I could probably swing something with makeup and kind of help me passing. Hair is also a big thing. This is a wig. If you didn't already know, because I'm only 2 months transition. So I have a really short, not really short, it's probably down to my nose right now. I'm growing it out, but I have like short brown hair. And when I first did my makeup without hair, I I felt like a clown. I'll just say that because I didn't get the right shade. I didn't really do. I mean, I did my makeup just fine. I look decent, but if you do your makeup and you're thinking, oh my god, this looks like shit. Like I would never pass as a woman. You just get totally like discouraged. Don't worry because I got online. Like I changed my mind. I bounced back and forth. I was like, okay, well maybe I am gonna detransition, and then I did my makeup, and then with short guy hair, and I didn't look like I thought I would. I didn't think I passed that well, and it freaked me out. And I was like, oh my god, I can never detransition. I'll never pass. Like this is a nightmare. And then for like a week, I decided, nope, I'm just gonna stick it out. You know what? Screw it. I'm adaptable. I'm a bit of a chameleon. I can figure it out. I can live my life as a guy. I was, whatever. I can do it. And then after a week, it's just the nagging feelings like, oh my god, I don't want to do this for the rest of my life. And so I went and I bought a wig, just a cheapy one, just like a $50 wig. And that really kind of changes things. It changed things for me. Like the hair really made me look different. And I feel like if you go online and you look at like gender change makeups, or like guys doing their makeup to look like a woman, or women doing it to look like a guy, the hair plays a big part of it. So, I mean, don't get discouraged if you don't look how you thought you were going to look, because anything can change. But I gotta consult the notes. So, yeah, I mean, and then once I got the hair, and I kind of took a trip to like 2 years ago, and I was like, oh my god, this is like what I used to look like. Maybe this isn't so bad after all. And so once I hit the point where it's like, okay, maybe if I wait, or if I get off testosterone for a while and I let my body kind of, because your fat redistributes, it's just like you'll start to look more feminine or more masculine depending on which one you're coming from. Things will start to change. But another thing that I was more worried about, some insecurities, was my voice. I was like, oh my god, it's like, sure, maybe I could do my makeup and I can look feminine and I can pass, but it's like, I was afraid that it's like, oh my god, I'm gonna be like helping, especially work was a big thing for me too, especially since nobody knew that I was trans in the first place. Not only explaining that not only am I trans, but I'm also detransitioning, I was not looking forward to. But I was afraid that somebody's like, oh man, can I help? Where's, like, in my head, it was a lot worse. I was picturing it as a lot worse than it actually was. And, like, I was overthinking it so much, which I'll kind of explain more later. But, like, I was so afraid that somebody was going to ask for help or something, and then they'd look at me and it's like, oh, it's a chick. Then I'd be like, that product's down aisle 12. And then I'd be like, oh my god, that's a dude. But that was probably my number one fear, and that's also something that I realized probably would never go back to the way it was. That's a permanent change, is your voice. So if you are thinking of transitioning first, just transitioning, I'd really think long and hard and probably see a mental health professional. Because if you really are trans, they're probably, depending on, if you go to somebody who just wants to help you out the best for you, they're not probably going to talk you out of it. They just probably want to make sure that you're actually trans, so you can, not irreversibly F up your body if you're making a horrible, horrible mistake. So that was something that I was really insecure about, was my voice. And it is a lot deeper. I'm moving the camera a lot, I'm sorry. And it is a lot deeper than it was originally. Like, it was really bad at first. But I did some also looking up. Also something, like, if you can't find information on detransition, I looked, since I was transitioning from male to female back, I looked up advice on people who were born male transitioning to female, and kind of what they did to, like, raise their voice and make their voice sound more feminine, because not every trans woman sounds like a guy. It's like a lot of people have deeper voices, but and I was like, okay, there's obviously got to be some sort of trick that I don't know about. And there's things called voice training, and I think just practice makes perfect. so that can change. It's a permanent change, but it's not the end of the world. Just give it time, is what I'd say. Consulting notes. Oh, passing voice. Coworkers. Also, one thing that I was absolutely batshit terrified of was transitioning at work, because like I stated before, I cheated. I never had to explain and go through the whole telling my coworkers I'm transitioning thing and then expect them to call me something different and go with, I was so afraid of being so extra, and being like, oh my god, it's just I'm Mike, but I want you to call me Ashley. And it's not a big deal, but I was thinking it was. I was blowing things out of the water. It's one thing that I'd probably say is that if you think something is going oh my god, this is not going to work, it's going to be horrible, it's going to be so weird, you're overthinking it. It's not. Don't freak out. I freaked out. Probably one of the things that was the main thing that was holding me back from detransitioning in the first place was, one, my living situation and my roommates, because I absolutely did not feel comfortable living in a place where I was and transitioning. The people there were nice, but it's just that would just make it way too weird. And the second thing was going to be work and transitioning with my coworkers and expecting everybody else to call me something different. And oh my god. It's I felt like I couldn't take myself seriously if I were to come into work with a full face of makeup from just nothing. Just come in almost as looking like a completely different person, which I did. And I was freaking out. That was something that I was really worried about, was transitioning at work. And at that point I had fully decided, it's okay, this is something that I have to do. So I was okay, well, maybe I'll just get a different job. I'll figure it out. I'll save up a couple $1,000s so I have money for rent for a few months while I transition, and then I'll just get a new job as a new person, like I did the first time. Kind of chicken out of going through the whole transition thing. And then I realized and currently where I am at this point in time, everybody's quarantined and all the businesses are shut down because it's 2020, this is this COVID thing. And I realized okay, if I quit my job now, I have a good job. I work at Walgreens, and I'm a shift lead management position. So I have a small little group of people that I am occasionally in charge of. And if I were to quit that job now, and try to get a different job, there's no guarantee that I'd get another job. With everybody closed right now, and I most likely would not be making the same amount of money, and that was a big influence for me. So I was okay, well, if I can't get a new job and I'm gonna detransition, I've got to at least talk to my manager or something and just let him know that this might be something I would do. I was okay, well, maybe I'll get a transfer. And I feel if you really feel that uncomfortable with the people you're working with and feel it would become a hostile work environment, then I would absolutely look at, if you can, transfer to a different district or wait and get another job, because your safety obviously comes first. But I got lucky. I'm good friends with all of my coworkers and everybody I work with, and my manager's really nice. And so I just kind of sat him down and kind of explains okay, I'm probably going to detransition. I'm going to start to look a lot different. And so he basically, because I told him I wanted to probably transfer because I didn't want to explain that I was going to switch. I didn't want to do anything like that. I didn't want to go through the whole transition at work. But he convinced me. He's what? You're going to leave just because you're transitioning? And I was oh, you don't think it's that big of it? You don't think it would be weird if I were to come in looking completely different? And then he's well, no, it's only weird if you make it weird, which is very, very true. You're in control. It's if you're transitioning at work, you're in charge of your own, you're steering your own ship. Nobody else, you can't control what anybody else does, you can control what you do. So if you make it weird, it's absolutely gonna be weird. But if you walk in there and you're just okay, I'm doing this, kind of deal with it or get out. You know, it's like you don't. I mean, those are like your coworkers. Oh, it's falling down. Like, and they may be some of like your friends, but also like those are just people that you work with. I mean, it's just like screw them. You don't owe them any sort of explanation. I mean, it's 2020. You can walk in like full drag one day and then walk in with a beard the next. I mean, and they might ask you questions and they might look weird, but it's just like you don't owe them anything. You don't owe them an explanation. You can do whatever you want, and they can't say anything. And if they do, complain, and then they will be made to shut up about it. And besides, I mean, really, I mean, do you think that somebody is really gonna make things hard for you? And in reality, what I had to kind of realize is that I was stressing out, thinking that everybody is just going to be weird, and everybody's going to be weirded out, and I'm not going to be, it's just going to make things hard at work, and then it's just, I'm going to have to deal with being misgendered. I mean, in reality, I mean, it kind of sucks, but, like, especially with your coworkers, you're like a blip in their life. Like, they're not thinking about you. They're not concerned with what you're doing. It's just, like, they have their own lives. I mean, like, how often do you think about, like, somebody you work with randomly? I mean, it's just, like, I don't really think, in my spare time, I don't really think about my coworkers at all. Like, I have my own life, and they have their own life, too. So, I mean, if you want to do whatever you want to do, I mean, I feel like you should just go for it, because, really, I mean, they don't care. I mean, nobody gives a shit. So if you're gonna shave your head, or, I mean, do whatever you're gonna do, I would just, you know, I mean, just do it. I mean, and if they give you hell, fuck them. I mean, not literally. I mean, unless you're into that, which, I mean, go for it. But, I mean, that's something that I really had to realize, was that nobody gives a shit. It's only weird if you make it weird. And just persistence, you know, I kind of had to decide, it's like, alright, well, if I'm gonna transition, you know, it's time to nut up or shut up, you know, and just do it. And, you know, not literally nut up, in my case, it's the opposite. But I just kind of had to go through with it. And so, step one for me was just getting out of the house, looking with my makeup done and everything like that, because I was so self-conscious about it at first. I was like, oh my god, how am I supposed to go out in public looking like this? I get a notification on my phone. I gotta make a different video because I'm running out of storage space. This is a long-ass video, oh my god. But, consulting the notes. Let me see. Yeah. Just nobody cares. I mean, just, you know, you do you. But while I'm on the subject, one of my other fears was ironically going back to being cis, but sounding trans because my voice was deeper. Which, I feel like your voice always sounds different to you. And I talk to people now, like I have conversations with coworkers, and it's, you know, it's like nobody really bats an eye or looks at me twice, except people who know me already. It's like, oh, so you're doing a new thing now. It's like, yep. And you don't have to explain it if you don't want to, you know, it's just like, if somebody asks, it's like, new look, that's all, trying something new, or you don't even have to say that. I mean, it's just, it's like, I mean, like I said before, you don't owe anybody any explanation. That's kind of my thoughts on that. Something else that I really was kind of freaked out was that a part of me was ashamed to detransition. More along the lines of just admitting that maybe I had made a mistake. Because I didn't want to admit that I was wrong, that I wasn't trans, because I felt like, oh my god, like that's horrible. It's like, how could somebody make that drastic of a mistake and not know your own identity? Because if I detransition and it's like, oh, well, I'm just not trans, somebody's like, well, how can you not be trans? But that's something that I just kind of had to get over. I mean, it's like, I'm a year and a half into being trans, so I mean, if you've made a mistake so far, I mean, I mean, you're sorry, you're shit out of luck. I've already transitioned, and if I decided that I haven't, then yep, I made a mistake, it's screwed up. Fine. Just, there's nothing you can do to change it, so, or nothing you can go back, in time, so you just gotta deal with it. So, my suggestions are, if you're freaking out and thinking about detransitioning, you are, or thinking that work is going to be a nightmare, or that you're not going to look or you're not going to look normal, or how you want, you're going to sound weird. I mean, it's like, you are absolutely overthinking it. I mean, the first day that I walked into work and I talked to my coworker, which I'm more close with, and I mean, the very first day, I mean, I went like that. There was no adjustment period. I walked in before work. I wasn't working, and I asked her in makeup. I didn't even know if anybody would recognize me, because I had my makeup done. But she did. She recognized me, and she's like, oh, damn, it's just like, you look different. And it wasn't a bad thing. And then she took me around and introduced me, and some of the coworkers that I thought would react kind of negatively actually reacted really positively, and it wasn't really an issue. And then some of the other coworkers that I thought, well, I'm going to have to explain that I was trans and then I'd be transitioning. Some of them already knew that I was trans. And then I was like, oh, well, I mean, I kind of wish you would have told me about that. There were so many missed opportunities for, like, opposite dick jokes that I could have made. That part, I was frustrated. I joke about things. That's how I cope. But, and then my one coworker, who I thought would probably react really negatively, he's kind of like the big sports jock, really straight. He has a girlfriend, and I was kind of like the guy friend, because I was a guy, and I was like, well, shit, I'm like one of the guys now. How is he gonna react to me going back, hopping the fence? But no, I mean, they were all really, really supportive, and I haven't really encountered anything negative so far. And I mean, and it really just reinforced the fact that I was freaking out over nothing, and then I was absolutely overthinking everything. I was blowing everything out of proportion. Other people's worlds do not revolve around you, and so 99% of the time, somebody, I mean, when they saw that I was changing it up, you know, they were like, oh, so like, okay, and then like a day later, it was old news. I mean, it's like, nobody cares. You are freaking out over nothing. So if you're transitioning, or you're whatever you're doing, I mean, just go for it. I mean, you're freaking out. Don't worry about it. Like, maybe for the first day or two, it might be, like, if you're thinking it'll be weird, it'll be an adjustment, definitely. But, I mean, after, like, a couple of days, I mean, it'll just be the new normal. So if you can survive a couple of days of awkwardness, if that, I mean, you'll be fine. I mean, like, you've gotten through worse, so you can do it. Consulting the notes again. Let me see. I'm just gonna have to make a different video on some of the other stuff, like side effects and stuff like that, but that's kind of the start of my story. If you have any questions, leave them down below. I think I've been blind as bad, I can't even see my own screen. I've been filming for 44 minutes now. Oh my god, this was supposed to be like a 10 to 20 minute video. Jesus fucking freaking Christ, I'm gonna get demonetized. Yeah, so that's that. I could make another video on, like, how I lived with roommates from the very beginning without them knowing I was trans and keeping that a secret. I could probably make a video on, like, a more in-depth video on, like, how work was and how I handled that, and going out in public again, and doing makeup again, and kind of makeup tricks, you know, to make yourself look a little bit more natural. But yeah, that's just my suggestions for detransitioning and what I wish I knew. The main thing is that if you think it's gonna go horrible, it's not. Nothing's permanent. You're absolutely overthinking it. Just do it. You know, nut up or shut up. Just, if you're gonna do it, you gotta do it. Just get it over with. And then I promise it will be easier afterwards. But just make sure it's what you want to do. You know, don't transition and then think that it's the wrong decision and detransition and realize that you were actually trans and you were freaking out. which would actually probably be easier. But it's probably really hard on your family and friends to transition and detransition and then retransition. They'll probably just think that you're crazy or have a multiple personality disorder. So, just wait and think things through before you do anything, because it causes a lot of issues down the line. So, that's my thoughts. I was mostly just a ramble for like an hour, 45 minutes. So, I don't know. I might make another video though. So, bye.
was the hardest part. And the strangest thing was waiting for that bell to ring. It was the strangest start. I could feel it go down. Bittersweet, I could taste in my mouth. Silver lining cloud. Oh, and I wish that I could work it out. And the hardest part was letting go, not taking part. You really broke my heart. Oh, and I tried to sing, but I couldn't think of anything. And that was the hardest part. Oh, oh, I could feel it go
Eli.
down. You left the sweetest taste in my mouth. The silver lining cloud. Oh, and oh, and
Just a quick tip.
And that was the hardest part. I could feel it go down.
Traditional melee minions and STRIT don't work well together.
You left the sweetest taste in my mouth. The silver line in the cloud. Oh, and I wonder what it's all about.
The minion bomber wastes a lot of the ST charges, causing the ST hero to lose out on all energy and not keep up shelter as much.
I wonder what it's all about. Everything I do, it just
So the first thing is that And what am I calling you, by the way? What do you go by?
You can call me Paul, yeah.
Paul? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So let's get started in just a second. Okay, so Mitch, can you any first of all, any questions, concerns about today? Like any thoughts? Should we just dive right in? Or
Questions, concerns? No, man, I'm good. I'm good. Yeah, you
Okay.
know, like I got no concerns, man.
okay, so can you
Yeah.
first of all, thanks for coming on again. I
Yeah,
was
no
really
problem. Thank you for
excited.
having me again.
Yeah, I was really excited to actually talk to you again.
I think the last time we spoke really helped me in a lot of ways. Actually, it made me see things differently, and I feel like it helped other people see a side of me I don't quite normally show. If that makes sense.
Yeah. So can you help me
Yeah.
understand what you saw differently after our last session?
Yeah, I definitely took into consideration what you said about the thinking black and white. So I've been trying to work on that. And not like look at it as things as just like set in stone like I used to look at them. So I'm trying to have more of an open mind with that.
Good.
And I've
That's
definitely
awesome.
been taking like steps. Sometimes when I'm, just feeling overwhelmed or whatever, I'm just like, all right, I'm just gonna think in the moment, just like chill, whatever. And I've been thinking like a lot about different things, I guess. It's hard to explain. It's like my like true calling for like who I want to be is kind of like surfacing, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that sounds awesome. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, honestly, I definitely think like I'm like really into like health stuff, right? And I've been thinking maybe I could like transition into like doing that somewhat and maybe monetizing it somehow. I don't know how, but like
Sure.
I don't know, just like doing something different and like having other hobbies that aren't just like, waking up and, streaming or whatever I've done for the last like 10 years, Just kind of living a little differently, doing some new things, maybe meeting some new normal people that aren't involved in Twitch and like maybe finding some
Normies.
successful, healthy relationships outside of this industry, if that makes sense.
I heard what I was listening to what you were talking about. You mentioned you're gonna trigger some stuff. I was like, no.
I don't know that I'm going to trigger some stuff, but I
well,
just meant
that we'll pay attention to when the ego is triggered.
Yeah.
Yeah, ups and downs, but I think yesterday I had I entered a place where I felt like I was like I can tell that there's two modes that I'm in. One is very small and activated, and I'm kind of stuck in like this hurt, anger, shame thing. And then another which kind of doesn't even understand that. It's like a much more confident place that. So I kind of have noticed that when I'm noticing trying.
Okay. Trying what?
Well, one of the practice that you basically gave me was to notice trying.
Yep.
Because I was trying all the time.
Yep.
And I noticed, I mean, I would love to share the conclusion, kind of the bigger
please.
insight that I felt I got. Can I do that?
Yeah, please.
So I feel that what I uncovered is this sense. So I wrote it down on this little whiteboard. But so like I decided long ago that kind of the world and other people are acceptable as they are. Like I don't really resist what is the external world's telling me. And then like, but because people react negatively to me all the time, or I felt that they did as a kid, that I'm unacceptable.
Okay.
So I feel like, but I know that deep down, I only kind of care about the other people around me or whatever, and I'm not going to hurt them, and I want to be nice and I want to be friends. And so
So
I feel like what I noticed is, okay, I have this inner sense of I just want to be nice, but then the outer response is never that we just be friends and things are simple. It's always in my young part or whatever, my young mind, it's like it always goes wrong. So I decided that basically the problem is somewhere in the middle. Like there's something going on that's about me where I can't get out that I want to be friends and want to be nice and stuff. So what I'm trying to do is I'm kind of trying to control how the stuff that's in gets out into like your brain.
yeah, you are trying. You're trying to control that. You're trying to control other people's perceptions of you.
That's that's what I noticed, that I'm trying. And I also noticed that the trying comes with a sense of panic.
Yes,
I'm
absolutely.
panicking at a very low level pretty constantly.
Okay.
And panic to me, it's kind of like, even if I write something on my hand in big letters, I can't see it because I'm like ruffling through the papers of how to fix the thing. Like in panic, there's like such little awareness. It's just on one thing.
Okay. So let me just pause. Okay, we're good. Are we good on volume? Perfect. Okay. Sorry. So I was adjusting volume. So I couldn't give you 100% attention. But can you tell me that part again about, so you accept other people for who they are, but somewhere along the way, you decided that you yourself were unacceptable.
That's right.
And that when you interact with people, you feel some degree of panic because, so panic is a manifestation of fear, and fear is related to a particular outcome.
Yeah.
What is the outcome that you're afraid of?
Wow. Okay, that's interesting. So I guess the outcome that I'm afraid of simply is that people are not going to see the real me.
Okay.
Like that, but it's kind of a bigger story where it's my fault. I'm going to mess this up again.
Okay. So tell me about when you started messing things up.
So as I thought about it, I kind of realized that my thinking that I mess things up started from a very young age. Like I have little flashes of, I remember my Uncle John was hella cool with me. I remember the people who felt safe. And I remember it was a small list of people. And I also remember that circumstances changed and that the safe people would sometimes become unsafe. And I didn't know why.
So I want you to just understand for a minute. So we're going to dig into that for a second, okay? But the first thing that I want you to understand is that your mind operates in different modes.
Yes.
Right? So when you're with safe people, the samskar is dormant.
Okay.
And so then that complex of like, I need to make sure that this person likes me. I need to be careful with what I say. This, like, all that complex, like, that's why you think about your uncle, because your samskar was dormant. And then what happens is the samskar activates around other people, or some people who you thought were safe do something that activates where your buddhi, your intellect, says, oh, this actually matches the samskar. We're actually not safe right now. This is that situation.
Yes.
It looks like a horse, but it's actually a wolf. And oh my God, we have to be careful. It's like a wolf in horse's clothing, right? So so let's talk.
I didn't get the wolf in horse's clothing.
It's a bad analogy. I was just kind of saying that, like, it looks like one thing. I
understand what you're saying. Yeah.
It looks like one thing, but then your mind says, actually, it's not what you think it is. That person is not safe. That person is dangerous, and we have to go back to controlling the way that they think about us.
Yeah.
So tell me about like what do you remember about like when you started to feel like you had to control other people's perceptions?
That's a really good question. Give me a second. I can remember, excuse me, I can remember being like 4 or 5 or whatever and being around aunts and uncles and having the sense that I'm supposed to say something and not knowing what that thing is. I also remember pretty clearly the feeling of when I did talk about what was interesting to me, which is nerdy shit, no one understood what I was talking about. And people would kind of look at each other and everybody would be like, oh, this is weird. And so I guess I didn't draw the conclusion yet that the answer or the solution was to control, but I do remember feeling that feeling that I respond to with the trying at a very young age.
Yeah.
Your question was when do I remember actually trying though, right?
Sure. We can stay where
Yeah, we
where
can
you
start
are.
there.
So I want you to just put yourself in the mind of a 4 or 5-year-old who tries to talk to an adult, and the adult's kind of like, it's clear that they sort of care about you, but then they kind of,
Yes.
How does that make the 4-year-old feel? What happens in the 4-year-old's mind?
You're asking about what I think a different 4-year-old. I identify so strongly with the 4-year-old that I find that when you ask me that question, I feel you're just asking me.
Yep.
Okay.
What happens in your mind? What happened in your mind?
It's almost worse, right? That this person like has to love me and care about me and they can't find what I'm talking about interesting. It's like, holy shit, I must be so weird and boring or whatever that like the deck's stacked in my favor.
Absolutely.
And it's still screwing it up.
So now we see actually that the Samskar is enhanced because of their caring of you.
Yeah.
Right? The
100%.
hurt that you feel, you're like, these people, they have to accept me.
Yeah.
But it's clear to me that they shouldn't want to.
Yes. Yeah, actually, as you bring that up, I noticed like an inherent discomfort with the feeling that someone might accept me or want to be around me because they're compelled to, not that they are voluntarily choosing. Like I have a hypersensitivity to.
Yep. So now we get to also something. So I think when you try to control other people's reactions towards you, I imagine that that's quite painful for you.
Yeah.
And you can't help yourself.
Could I refine? I mean, this
Sure.
could be just, ridiculous. This could be, ego and stuff. I mean, I would love help with understanding what's going on in my mind, actually. My sense is that I carry the sense that I'm unacceptable with me all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And that I actually am not necessarily trying to control the other person's reaction so much as perfectly filter out what I am putting out there to avoid the part that's like the unacceptable me. So I am in a sense trying to control the reaction, but from my own locus of control, right? I'm
Absolutely.
controlling my presentation.
So
in a
great. So I think you're spot on. So that's what I mean. So what I'm saying is that you're not letting people form a genuine and authentic judgment of you as a person.
Absolutely not. I feel I've already made that decision on their behalf. Actually, one of the things I noticed with the trying as I was, in the past week is that, for example, if at work I want to get something, I think that something's really important and it's the right thing to do, I will immediately go to a line of reasoning that's basically like, I know that you shouldn't agree with this idea just because I'm saying it. I'm so untrustworthy. So don't look at me, look at the evidence and the document that was produced and like the track record. Like look at the objective stuff, because if you look at me, I know that you're going to conclude that I'm bad and wrong. You should do this idea in spite of the fact that I'm attached to it or associated with it. Does that make sense?
Makes a lot of sense, right?
Like
So
predetermine that.
yeah, so your conclusion is that, and that too, so you're trying to filter the part of yourself which is unacceptable, and you're relying on documentation and logic for people to, because if they actually saw you, if they're, the more they're able to uncouple you from your work product, the better the work will be. And if they see who you are, then they're not going to have faith in you. The work should stand on its own 2 feet, and it shouldn't be like tainted by association with you.
Right.
So
unfortunately also I think happens to be true in terms of like when I think about ideas for myself, I shouldn't just believe what I think because I think it, because that's like, you know what I mean? I should be super objective. So it's unfortunate that I've kind of that's true because But anyway, that was a tangent.
So let's go to why do you so when you filter, what does that feel like for you? When you filter who you are and present it to the rest of the world, what does that feel like for you?
Yeah, it feels terrible.
What feels terrible?
It feels
about
terrible. Mostly, what feels terrible about it? Honestly, when it feels really bad is the bigger picture feeling that I have is that I'm here and I just want to be helpful and I don't want to hurt anybody and I don't need anything in return. And no matter what I do, that will never come across. That's what it feels like in my mind. Like, I don't know. I feel like I want it.
Did someone?
My intent is to. Sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
It's like. The ideas that I like are ones that everybody likes. And so, like, I'm coming and I'm trying to say, like, hey, I think I know how to help. Like, we could do this thing and then it's going to be good for you and you and you and you and you. And actually, everyone wins and it's better because these people are hurting and they'll hurt less. And, like, y'all are stressed out. You'll be less stressed out. Like, let's just do this. And it's like, there's this idea that feels super pure that's just going to get, it's almost like a dog that's going to get kicked. It's like this innocent kind of thing that for whatever reason I can't.
When the idea gets kicked, you mean that something pure is going to get rejected?
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Why do you think
and
that
it's
happens?
Gonna be my fault.
Because the reason it gets rejected is because it gets it ends up getting associated with you.
Well, to be honest, so it's like I already know the end of the movie. You brought that up with somebody else before, where I'm not. This is not. Now that we're talking about it, it's very clear to me that this is not logical. But I've predetermined that that's how it's going to end.
Okay.
Like there's something that I have that I want to share with the world, and it's a good, pure thing. And at the end of the day, it's going to get rejected, and it's going to be my fault.
Who did that to you when you were young? What did you share with people that was rejected?
Damn, dude, isn't it like everything? My thoughts, my attention.
Is it everything?
My offers to help. Okay. Like my presence.
Yeah, is that how you felt? Did you feel like your presence was offensive? Like, does something come to mind?
Yeah, for sure.
Can you share that with us?
Presence being offensive, I think like grade school. I felt.
Tell me about that.
Yeah, I have a number of memories that are around friends that I had when I was young that I had falling outs with for various reasons and kind of sense that it was my fault or something. I don't know where to start because I think it's kind of tangled in some ways.
So why don't you just start with just start anywhere?
All right, so
just give me a memory.
So I remember being really good friends with this kid who lived across the street.
Beautiful.
It was a summer home. He was older than me. So maybe I was 5 or 6, maybe he was 8 or 9. And I thought that he was the coolest person in the history of the world. And, you know, we hung out, like we did stuff, so on and so forth. He would come to my house. I would go to his house. And then one day he asked me, he was like, hey, let me see your laser pen. My mom had just bought me a laser pen. It was like $90 or something like that, which is a lot of money when you're that young. I don't know why my parents would buy a nine. Anyway. And so I went to grab it and I like opened the drawer where it was and it wasn't there. So long story short, you know, it was like pretty clear that he stole it. And like, he was just doing that as just a stupid kid. Like stupid kids draw attention to things that they did. And I definitely remember, so I remember that my parents kind of got involved and they talked to his parents and it was kind of like he wouldn't admit it and like was not upset about it. And, you know, they were like, okay, this is, you know, you can't be friends with him. And I distinctly remember feeling like I didn't really care that he stole the laser pen. I'd rather have a friend. And so I almost felt like it was my fault that they found out that they stole it, that he stole the thing. Because if they didn't find that out, then I still would have my friend.
So you felt responsible for y'all's friendship ending.
Yeah. I remember feeling responsible. Yeah. I remember just feeling like I had this thing that was, you know, kind of beautiful to me or precious to me, like a real, like a really cool friend. And it was gone. And I didn't do everything that I could have to stop that from happening.
Mm-hmm. And so it's almost as if you had filtered yourself and not shared that with your parents.
Yeah.
Then y'all would still be friends.
Yeah, maybe we would.
Yeah. I mean,
I also remember later, which I think is like built on top of this one wound or whatever,
Sure.
that, you know, he told me these stories about this game Clock Tower where he was like, oh yeah, you could do anything. And like, I found this woman and like killed her and stuffed her in a basement or some shit. And I remember I know it's kind of messed up and I didn't understand how messed up it was at the time. And I remember that I shared that in second grade when a teacher said some shit about like, are video games violent or good or whatever? I love video games, but for whatever reason, I volunteered this information. But then I found out that was a lie. So it kind of recontextualized the relationship I had with him in the first place, where like not only did he steal this thing and not care, but also lied to me about some things that I thought were super cool. So now I've got this judgment from my younger self for even thinking that he was so cool.
So you blamed
there's, like,
yourself
a
for
lot of
thinking
mix-
you blame yourself for him thinking that he was nice to you when he was mean to you.
Yes.
So that I think
I
is
have
separate.
a lot of that. Yeah, okay, it's probably separate, but I have a lot of that. Like I noticed that when I look back at myself, I really feel not good about who that person was.
In what way? What do you not feel good about?
I just feel like, what do I feel not good about? I feel like such an idiot when I think that I'm okay and something gets recontextualized as I'm not okay. Does that make sense?
Makes perfect sense. So let me put
It's
it
like
to you.
when I have the slight hope that I am acceptable, because like this whole Subscar is about unacceptable. When I have this slight hope that I am, and then I learn something later that's like, oh, you were actually wrong there too. It's like, wow, I was such an idiot for even like hoping.
Yeah, so that actually does sound very related. It just is as you tie those two things together, right? Because what I'm hearing from you is that you have learned that your confidence and your perception of acceptability turns out to be false.
Yeah.
But that too, so I want you to notice this, that is very selective buddhi. That's selective reasoning.
Say more. 'Cause
Right? So
in the place where I'm at, I don't even see it, which is proof of the phenomenon.
exactly, right? So like that's so if we just think about, you know, can a 5-year-old appropriately judge the intentions and quality of friendship that an 8-year-old offers?
No.
Absolutely not. It's fucking absurd.
You
5-year-olds will get owned day after day after day by 8-year-olds.
You like literally don't know what's going on. when
Yeah,
they talk.
literally. Like you do not even have
Yeah.
you're playing, it's like you're playing a game without a controller.
It's like Shrek. It's like Shrek, how little kids can watch Shrek and all these jokes just go way over, like they
Absolutely.
have no awareness that they, and so Shrek is running circles around little kids.
Yeah. And yet, so even when we stop and think about that, but like that's not how you see yourself, right? You have a standard that you should have known better. You shouldn't have let him take advantage of you.
Yeah.
In a sense, what you're doing is you're being unacceptable towards yourself. Like you are not accepting who you are.
Yeah.
Right? And I think that's the crux. So, I mean, we're talking about other people not accepting you and where the feeling of unacceptance comes from. I think wherever it comes from, it's certainly reinforced by yourself or propagated actually by yourself. I think the linchpin here is that you don't accept who you are. It's not about actually showing people. So it's actually funny because you kind of think other people can't see the real me, but what it really is that you don't think that the real you is worth showing. Because you aren't okay. That's why you have to filter. Because you're tainted.
I agree with everything on a visceral level except the phrase that I don't think the real me is worth showing. It's like I think maybe what feels more correct is that I've already looked and I know it's not good enough, kind of thing. So it's not that it's worth
Sure.
showing, it's just that I know what I'm going to show and it's not what it needs to be. Actually, the thing that clicked for me yesterday, I was talking to a good friend and a guru, and he was kind of asking about when I chose to look at myself that way, when I chose to not be acceptable to myself.
Mhm.
And that does seem like the original, that seems like the thing that persists, like
Yeah.
my own. Yeah, go ahead.
I completely agree. I mean, I think this is propagated by you, right? So now we have to understand. So even though, Bobby, this causes you suffering, this is how this whole complex is based to protect you.
Yeah.
Because if you believe that you are unacceptable, then you can't. Then other people, then you have to filter. Because if they see what's unacceptable, it's going to be a no-brainer. They're going to reject you. But this really comes down to so two things, right? So one is where that belief comes from and when you started to build your life around that belief.
Early.
The chat rules say
So now I'm
insult
going to ask
each other.
you, when you feel this
That's
way
a pretty
at work,
retarded
when you
rule.
feel like the rejection is inevitable, it's going to be kind of a weird abstract question that may not make sense. How old are you?
Actually, my sense of internal structure collapses. So
Absolutely.
I think I must be so young because I don't even have a sense of like my physical body. If
Absolutely.
that makes sense.
Yeah, it makes perfect sense. So I think what you
I
are...
think that's a good practice. I mean, I just want to share that because I think it would be helpful for others. Like if you notice that sometimes you feel like you have structure, and sometimes if you track that, sometimes you feel like you have literally no structure. Like that's, I think, really meaningful because that's the thing that really clicked for me is that I have a sense of my structure right now talking to you.
Yep.
But when I think about being at work, I actually don't even.
Yeah.
I feel like I don't have a body.
So when a samskar activates, it returns your mind to the age at which it was formed.
Mm-hmm.
So, and so I think what's happening is like a 4 or 5-year-old doesn't really have a sense of internal structure, right? They don't. So I think what's happening is like you're evoking these thoughts or feelings that come from there. They don't actually come from the here and now. They come
Are
from the
you
past.
streaming a podcast while you play GW?
And so
XD.
I'll just give you another example. So I was working with someone and they had a lot of social anxiety, and we were talking through like what that meant for that, like what that felt like for them, and then like I kept on asking questions, and like he was just unable to give me any kind of sophisticated answers. Like I was asking like what's the feeling, and he's like I don't really know, like what's the so then we were talking about, so he wanted to get a job, but he felt embarrassed to go into like a place and ask for an application for a job. And as we talked to like how irrational that is, like it didn't really make a dent. And so then like eventually like we got to like I pushed him and I pushed him and I pushed him, and his response was, I just don't wanna.
Yeah.
And that's it, right? It's not complicated. It's not like Freudian. There isn't this deep subconscious conflict. It's just somewhere along the way, when he interacts with people, when his mind formed this idea, I just don't wanna. It's like not even a fully formed, like grammatically correct sentence.
Yeah.
The core of it is I just don't wanna. And that's actually enough. That can be the end of the road.
Yeah.
And the interesting thing is he's doing way better now because like now he realizes that like in him, there's a part of his mind that is just not going to want to do something. And you can't make sense of it. It's not some deep subconscious conflict. There's no Oedipal want to sleep with your mom and knock out your dad or like any of these deep complicated stories. It's just within him, there's a 7-year-old who just didn't want to go to school because he was bullied. And he didn't want to put himself in front of people. And he just doesn't want to. That's it. It's the end of it.
Yeah.
There's nothing to unpack. There's nothing to explore. That's it. And he carries that seed of I just don't wanna with him all the time. And there are times where that seed emerges, like most of the time, like he's able to do things with his friends and stuff like that. And he actually does want to do things. He does want to get a job. He wants to get a job at particular places. He thinks the people who work there are cool. He'd like to work there. He thinks it would be fun to work there. And when he thinks about walking up to them and asking them for a job application, The I just don't, he gets a case of the I just don't want us. And that's the samskar that activates. And the real challenge here is that people think, so like Bobby, you think this is you, right? You operate under the assumption that this is who you are. Like your conclusions, you don't treat this as like an external thing. You treat this as you.
Yeah.
So he just feels like he's a lazy fucker because he's got a part of him that just doesn't wanna. And he identifies with that. He doesn't understand that that is just a samskar that activates from time to time. And if you actually look at your life, that you are valued by many people, that he's appreciated and loved, and people think he's cool and funny and also physically and sexually attractive. And like all kinds of stuff that he just like, I just don't want is not able to hold that. And so in your case, I mean, you say that you have all this kind of conflict and that you're unacceptable and that you've gotten really, really good at filtering yourself, which is probably how you rationalize your success. But it sounds like you have a kid and you're married and you have friends and you have meaningful relationships. And also you've held a job for years. And so you're not so abrasive or toxic that they've fired you, which they do. And so like, let's just think about that for a second. Are you so good at filtering that you have fooled all of these people?
So the way that I rationalize it is actually with a sense of duty and responsibility to the other people who feel the way that I feel. I think somewhere along the line, I got the sense that I wasn't alone in feeling I was unacceptable. I think that this is important because I think that I actually grew like this separate part with that belief. In other words, I don't necessarily rationalize. In other words, if you ask me why I think I'm successful, I would say that like I get it. I get the struggle. I build products for the people who have the struggle that I have. Not everybody has the struggle that I have, and I don't think that I'm better than them at all. I just think that if you haven't gone to this deep dark place of all that stuff and you haven't really looked around, you don't get how sensitive it is as a 4-year-old, as a 5-year-old, as a 7-year-old. And so when I'm building products, I'm holding the 4, 5, 6, 7-year-olds and all of us like in that design.
Beautiful.
And I feel that like, do you know what I
So
mean?
that's I'm with you. So that's your dharma and that's your karma. So this is
Yeah.
how karma and dharma relate.
They're
right?
so related. Yeah, it's crazy. Yeah.
So explain that to us.
So I've had experiences in my life that have been painful. They haven't killed me. And for a long time, I thought I was alone in that. And that really hurt. And so I know how much hurt there is in that feeling. And because I know how much hurt there is, I know how important it is to tend to that and how hungry people are for that kind of tending and that kind of attention. So I know that, you know, through that negative experience, I have something that, you know, later on, I don't know how it happened inside me, but I decided that we're not alone and I can do something about it. And if I never had the experiences, if I didn't have the karma, if I wasn't led to the place where I made that decision, that that's the thing that I'm going to fix, then, you know, I could never have the duty and responsibility to do it. So
perfect. Right. So your karma, even your hurt and your suffering, set you up to do your duty or responsibility. They made you the person that you are, and without those experiences, you would not be able to have hurt and suffering at the forefront of creating products for like creating stuff at Twitch.
Yeah, exactly right.
Which is kind of bizarre because when you think about product developers at Twitch, I don't think that that's the kind of thing that they would be thinking about. But I think if, you know, you've been at Twitch for 6 years and Twitch has done very well over the last 6 years. I think part of the reason is because you're keeping something really like deeply spiritual, for lack of a better term. I mean, I just call it spiritual, but maybe psychological, whatever, at the forefront of the work that you do. And it doesn't surprise me that you're successful there. So
but at the same time, I feel, right, it's a part of the exact same narrative where it's like, hey, this is the thing that I'm doing and it works. And you will never, right, the others, the people who will find me unacceptable, you'll never believe me and never let me do the work that I feel I have to do. that's where the conflict comes in, and where I
Yeah,
really start to control and have that anger, hurt swirl.
Good. So let's talk about that. So the first thing is that I think that these things are not actually like related. I think the dharma and karma is sort of a genuine sense of who you are. And I think the unacceptability, like the dharma is what lets you tolerate and get away with your feelings of unacceptability. But I don't believe for a second that having the dharma that you have makes people like you. And that if you've been successful at Twitch for 6 years and you've managed to get married and you have friends and stuff like that, that human beings are pretty good at like judging other human beings. And that there's something that they see in you that they actually do wholeheartedly accept. Otherwise, because here's the thing, you're abrasive, right? Yeah.
It depends. It depends on if I feel that I. But
so
yes,
let's just say yes.
Let's just say yes.
And so just think about this for a second. For someone who's as abrasive as you are, they sure as hell have to accept something deep within you to have to like work with you on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, I am very different. In different contexts, but I think ultimately, like, I have to agree. I mean, I think you're. What is my sense? I have this sense that I'm unacceptable. The people who accept me anyway, those are the safe people. The people who don't, those are the unsafe people. That's kind of how I've rationalized it. That
Sure.
there's some people who can accept someone even like me.
Yeah, so I think that makes sense. I don't think that that's really a rationalization. I think that's actually just an accurate observation. That with some people, they, you have the perception that you show them the real Bobby and they accept you and therefore they're safe. And that there's a larger camp of people who you can't let them see the real Bobby because they won't accept you. And then you're like abrasive and combative and you don't understand why they don't understand what you're trying to tell them and stuff like that. And it sounds like actually in some ways you're hard to work with.
Yeah, that's probably true. Yeah.
And the bizarre thing is that
I'm sure that's true. I'm sure that's true.
And the bizarre thing is that
I don't know what to do about it.
Yeah, we'll get to that. Yeah. So, but the bizarre thing is that if we really look at your situation, if you have an abrasive person who people continue to work with, rather than them being unacceptable, their acceptability has to be way higher because your abrasiveness is making it like harder to deal with you.
Sure. Yeah.
So in a really weird way, I think like the safe people are way larger, that group is way larger than you realize.
Yeah.
So
I think you're right about that. Yeah. Yeah.
So now the question is like, where do we go from here? Okay. So the first is I want you to recognize that, as we start to think those kinds of thoughts, that runs contrary to the perception and construction that you've made. Right? Which is that your perception is that you're unacceptable on the inside, and through a lot of surface level filtering, you can create an appearance of acceptability. But what I'm actually hearing is quite the opposite. Is that on the outside, you can sometimes be difficult and abrasive. So you're not creating anything like the filter. You're actually creating like a negative filter, not a positive filter.
Yeah,
and
filter.
Despite the negative filter that you're putting out in terms of your abrasiveness and your, internal sense of your unacceptability, people are able to see through that bullshit and still value working with you in some capacity.
Yeah, my real sense actually, so I have the sense that I'm acceptable deep down, but no one will ever know it. Like however I talk, however I interface with the rest of the world, in other words, like there's some gold deep down, but there's so much shit between the gold, which is me or whatever, that no one will ever see the good. Right? That's the struggle that I live with every day. Okay. That I know deep down there's value, and that I want to help, and that if only I wasn't such a problem, that stuff could get out into the world.
So
does that make sense?
Makes perfect sense.
Okay.
So what I'm hearing is, so I'm going to ask you a question. So tell me about, if you remember anything about when someone didn't dig through the shit and find the gold. When they looked inside you, you opened the doors and they just saw a sea of shit and they like ran away.
I I remember feeling misunderstood as a kid where okay, I have a really strong memory. I don't know if I brought it up, where it was a Sunday and I was playing with my cousins. Did I bring that memory up?
Mm-mm.
I was having so much fun. It was the kind of childish, joyous fun where, the whole rest of the world's gone and you're just where you are. And then on Monday, it turned out that I had homework that I was supposed to do, and I just, I had, I was caught with my pants down. And this was maybe the third time that I forgot to do homework or something like that. And I remember really getting the riot act or whatever. I remember that really being like, hey, you've got a problem here and this cannot happen anymore. And so it's kind of recontextualizing that joyous fun with, right, like,
Who
bad.
gave you the riot
I
act?
couldn't. Well, my parents, and I think the teacher was like not particularly happy.
Okay.
I remember one time very clearly. I was in 4th grade. I remember it so well that something happened. The teacher said something, and like I was actually listening to them, but I think I was doing it in an abrasive way, where it was kind of a know-it-all way, and I actually got punished just for clarifying like what the teacher had said, because I knew that somebody else didn't understand what they said, and I just felt like, what the f? I'm actually trying to help you do your job, and I'm getting punished. Like, that makes no sense.
So
Like,
it's
this is
almost
what I thought I was supposed to do, and I'm getting punished for what I'm supposed to do.
yeah. So what I'm hearing is that you offered your gold and they perceived it as shit.
Yeah. I feel like when I think back to my childhood, there was a lot of mixed messages. Like, there was a lot of times when I would be in trouble for no reason. Like, maybe my dad would be having a bad day and he was just stressed, and I couldn't understand that he was just venting.
Can you tell me about your dad?
Yeah, my dad. I think that if people knew my dad, it would make so much sense out of me. He's so okay. He's like basically always the coolest guy in the room. He's a shorter Italian guy. I think he's 5'7" or something like that. It's like he doesn't look like Joe Pesci at all. He's like skinnier and stuff. He's more Vata for sure. But he tells a story where he went to a party one time and a woman said to him like, "Who are you? Like, you're somebody, right?" And he was like, "I could have been somebody," kind of thing. And he definitely like, he runs the show. It was very clear for like the whole extended family. He's like the patron, the padrone, and he is very vocally critical about kind of like anybody being lazy or not pulling their weight or whatever. And so he kind of uses humor, but he's using humor to kind of keep everybody in check, if that makes sense. He's like policing.
And what do you think that you said earlier that if people like knew my dad, they'd understand you better? How does that help us understand you?
I've said it for a long time, but I don't necessarily know that I've thought about why I think it.
Sure.
Why do I think it?
Yeah. What does that tell you about what does that tell us about you?
Well, I've got his blood in me, and also I grew up as, under his kind of power and authority. And if you see the way that he acts, you'll sense a tremendous amount of stress and anxiety, as well as like a loud kind of personality.
In what way does he act that makes you feel stress and anxiety?
He feels a lot of stress and anxiety. Like, I think that all of his external stuff is just dealing with his internal state. The fact that like his body system is telling him like flooding him all the time with like threat signals or whatever.
Okay.
I feel definitely consistently overwhelmed by like my body telling me that like there's something really wrong. I think he does too.
What is your body telling you is wrong?
Now?
Sure.
Dude, the world's in a bad spot. We got to do something.
Okay.
There's people suffering. I think it's 60% of people are lonely in America. So it's like 2 out of 3 or something like that. I don't know. Some crazy number.
And you feel that in your body?
I can, yeah.
What does that feel like?
Tightness in my chest. Like a kind of burning focus. It's a sense of like fire and it's like the laser beam, right? It's a strong focused energy in a direction. and it comes with kind of like an impatience
Mhm.
and an anger around why isn't anybody looking at this. I kind of feel that a lot.
Yeah.
My dad told me his dad was actually a union organizer, so not a union leader or whatever, but he was the guy who was in the factory saying like, "What are we doing?
Yeah.
These guys are making all the money and we're getting screwed. Like, what are we doing?" And he was so nuts about it that he actually fucking founded a union.
Yeah. So
Like
you
that kind of feeling.
ha-
I feel like I've got that in me. You know,
absolutely. You do. That's pitta.
I
by the
learned
way.
that very late in life. By the what is it?
That's pitta.
Yeah, yeah. I feel like I've got all. I've tried doshik. That's how I feel. But
Well, you're primarily vata and pitta. So I'm sure. I mean, everyone has some degree of doshas, but if you have a fair amount of color in your face, for example, and then we also see that you're irritable, abrasive, driven, focused, all pitta attributes. And yeah, so Bobby, I think
yeah, you're right.
when you talk about your dad, I certainly think that that's significant, but I'm still a little bit curious about how he contributed to you becoming the person that you are.
He was stressed all the time that I was not going to make it. I remember him walking around just being like, "This kid's not going to make it.
He's just not going to make it?
This kid's not going to make it." I remember he would say, it's not a one-time thing. He would say that a lot. Just kind of like throwing his hands up like, "This kid's not going to make it. I can't protect him."
What does that do to you? What does that do to a kid?
Something.
Yeah.
Especially when I felt deep down that was not correct, right?
Mhm.
It's this feeling of there's something down here that he can't see and nothing I fucking do will ever change that, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
How could it be that there actually is something good here and he can't see it? Like you know what I mean? How could it be? Like there must be something so wrong in the rest of me that's what it feels like, right?
Yeah. So what have we been talking about for the past 30 or 40 minutes?
We've been talking about this.
Absolutely.
Yeah. We've been talking about the sense that like there's something.
So a lot of things are clicking, right? So you said that there are a couple things. One is that he can't see it. And all he sees is you fucking up and forgetting your homework. And he also lets you know
or whatever it is, like random stuff.
Yeah. That's actually a significant detail because it's not. So if it's just one thing, then you end up with a samskar that you're bad at homework. You're like, oh man, I suck at school or I'm not good at studying.
No. Head in the clouds, right? That kind of thing. Like an airhead, like doesn't.
But
take care of itself.
So it's multi-dimensional for him, which also means that you're not unacceptable in one way. You're unacceptable in every way.
Yeah, it's generalized. Yeah. Yes.
And then there's also something subtle, which you kind of mentioned some time ago, which we haven't really explored, but there's something that bothers you about people who clearly you're not acceptable, but they have to love you anyway.
Mm-hmm.
And that sounds like, I mean, if we had to, take that statement out of context from half an hour ago and plug it in here, it fits perfectly because we're talking about, of all people, your dad.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's kind of like, I guess I had the sense that other people were kind of faking it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, of course. So that, I think, is also completely rational for a young kid. Mm-hmm. Because you trust your parents and you sort of set your compass, like you set the gold standard based on how your parents treat you. And if the rest of the world is congruent with that, that's fantastic. And if it's not, you don't accept the rest of the world. And I see this a lot actually in cases of abuse where like when a child is taught that they're a piece of shit and then like when they're adults and like people treat them with love and care and respect, how do you think they respond?
Not well.
Why not?
Like you kind of can't believe it, right? You
Absolutely.
have to come up with a story that makes it not the simple truth. Like it can't just be that simple.
Perfect. It's fucking confusing and bewildering to them. They do not understand it at all. Yeah. It's so confusing.
Yeah.
And so then what they do is they start doing all kinds of weird acting out behaviors to
Yeah.
align the relationship with what they believe about themselves,
Yeah.
right? So they start doing things that drive their partners, like I'm just thinking about romantic situations where like someone is genuinely like loved and cared for by another person, and that's so confusing for them. So they start doing things that shift the relationship towards something that they like are familiar with, which actually is to try to incite their partner to like get angry with them or is sometimes even like try to get them to be physically abusive. I've worked with someone who literally would like just attack their partner because they wanted their partner to like beat the shit out of them. And the partner just wouldn't do it. And it was just really, really confusing. And it took some time to untangle. But it's wild, like what people will do. Like they want to play the game that they know how to play.
Yeah.
And so the funny thing is that if we want to get really sort of, loose associations, what do you do at work?
Yeah. Okay, how do I have an original idea about this right now? Because as you asked that question, I know I've said things along these lines about my behavior and reflection in the past. In other words, I'm kind of
Don't give
trying
me
to
don't
be
give me the
good
answer
enough
that
and-
don't give me the answer that I want. Don't give me the right answer. Give me your answer.
The one that pops into my head when I look at my own behavior is like I'm trying so hard to get the gold out, and I kind of go up to dad, but I do it in this way that's self-defeating. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
Like I do it in a way where, and I'm not. But the thing is that I feel very blind to what is happening in the middle.
Yep.
You know?
As do they. But if you're fucking abrasive at work, you're driving them towards unaccepting.
Yeah. Yeah.
You're trying to make them feel about you the way that you feel about yourself, because then the world makes sense. And then on the flip side, you're trying to do the exact opposite because you're paranoid and you're fighting and you're conflicted. And that's why, like, it sounds like you're in a state of semi-constant torture.
Yeah. Yeah.
Sounds awful, man.
Yeah. It's not. Yeah. It's not fun. It's definitely not fun.
So, I mean, I don't know. I mean, I think personally it's a little bit of a stretch to think that you're really sort of subconsciously kind of driving people towards being unaccepting. That's the kind of, psychoanalysis level bullshit that I normally call bullshit on. So
yeah, I think what I do, right, is like I'll go into an interaction. I don't think I start as abrasive necessarily, but maybe I do. Honestly, when I feel more like it's a powerful person or a person with power, I am worse. That's for sure.
So let me ask you something. If someone starts to accept your ideas, is generally accepting your ideas, how do you feel?
I think a little bit desperate.
See? This is weird.
Desperate.
Right? So this makes perfect sense. This is consistent with our hypothesis because what's actually happening is you are getting accepted. They're actually accepting your ideas. And then you get confused. And then you get desperate. One would
I think I get desperate. It's like there's a thing here that I want so badly, and like I can't let it get away, kind of thing.
And so what do you do in your interactions with them?
Like dump.
Absolutely.
Dump.
What does that mean?
So there's basically, it's like a dam. There's like a dam of all these things that I've wanted to share with people for years and years and years. And so, it's like I feel like no one is ever going to listen, sort of thing, because I suck. And so if I sense that someone is listening, it's like the dam just blows open and there's so much that I want to say, and it's very, very overwhelming and disorganized.
And then how do they respond?
Like they're overwhelmed and have no idea.
And then what does that do to the size of your dam?
Well, I think once the good comes out and it runs them over, like if they haven't received it properly, then the angry starts to come out, actually.
Sure. And then I think the next day what you do is you build your dam higher.
Yeah, for the next person. Yeah, for sure.
Absolutely, right? So now we're seeing like this is all kind of tied together because like what happens is when you get a little bit of acceptance,
Yeah.
you flood them with it. And so then what happens is like you get back to this kind of idea that like you're reinforcing this idea that you're like they're not going to accept what you have, and then you have to build the walls higher.
Yeah, and actually, to be honest, it's like it starts from the in other words, even when I interact with people, it's like I start from the premise that they're not going to accept me, and maybe if they accept things, it'll be because of my resume and because of the quality of the ideas. So I focus the whole conversation on these things that I'm not even sure they, when I'm talking with you, I'm not sure if anybody cares about.
Okay, so
It's kind of like I'm preparing a case for why they should. It's like I'm preparing a case.
yeah, I
On the one
understand.
hand, I killed somebody, you know, and so you. But then on the other hand, look at all these good things, and maybe
Yeah.
on the balance, you can get over, you know, this dam because of all this stuff over here.
So Bobby, I'm going to try to offer. So first of all, let's just take a step back because I'd like to offer you something kind of concrete, which I hope will let you move forward in at least one serious step. Because I'm getting the sense that we're sort of teasing a lot of stuff apart, but I'm getting a growing sense within me of like, what do we do about all of this?
Yeah.
So first of all, help me understand what we've covered today and what you think, like, where are we? Like recap for me what you understood from our discussion today.
Give me 1 sec. So I had not said explicitly the part about my dad kind of my experiences with my dad giving me the sense that there may be something good here, but like no one will ever see it, and it's like there's so much in the way that's bad. I had never explicitly said that, and I think that's super core. Aside from that, I think that I'm aware of most of what we discussed, and I think what we're talking about is kind of a double bind, where
How so?
How do I put this? And I feel like that's where the sense of what do we do about it comes from, even in me, as I've worked very, very, very desperately on, you know, this problem. In that I at the same time believe that I'm good and that I'm completely. I believe that I'm like good and completely bad at the same time.
Yep.
And that causes me to act in super confusing ways.
Yep.
To myself and to other people.
Absolutely.
Is that maybe the simplest way to put it?
Beautiful way to put it, right? So your confusion. This is a problem of confusion. This is a problem of someone who is taught that love involves physical abuse and then just gets fucking confused. Because there's a part of them that also realizes that they deserve honest and authentic love that involves no abuse. And there's a part of them that also has learned. Go.
When I look for acceptance from my dad, I think that what the case that I want to provide is I'm almost saying, hey, Dad, I heard everything that you told me, and I started from the premise that I'm not going to make it. And so I thought about this, which is bad, and here's the answer. I've mitigated this problem with myself, and I've mitigated this one with myself, and I've mitigated this one, and that's why you should trust me. In other words, I know that I'm bad, and I've done all this work to like be acceptable for this one moment.
What do you think about that? So that sounds like that's a very common pattern in your life, right? Have you done that?
It's like when you bring up the abuse, which is not my experience, but it's like I want someone to hit me so that then, right, we can kind of get closer. I know that the hit's going to happen. Let's just get it over with. And then we can find our way to a place where like we can be okay with the fact that I got hit.
Yeah. So what I'm hearing is, let's just. Here's what I'm hearing from you in terms of like you're the premise that you're unacceptable and damage control. You're saying, okay, why don't you guys just tell me I'm incompetent to begin with, so that I can get to all of the reasons why you guys should still value what I'm doing.
100%.
Let's just
Yeah.
get the fact that I'm incompetent completely out of the way. Let's start
Let's
there.
get it out of the way.
Even if I'm incompetent, I still think you guys should buy this blender for $19.99 plus shipping and handling. And if you buy one right now, you're going to get a second one for free.
That's exactly right.
Right?
That's exactly right. Yeah.
And
In other words,
so-
I'm the shittiest user of a blender. I cut all my fingers off. I can blender. Like, you should trust me because I'm an idiot.
yeah.
No one understands incompetent blender customers more than me.
Yeah. So how do we get out of this? Okay, so a couple of thoughts. Okay. So the first is you have to let go of the premise that you're unacceptable. And I realize that's easy to say and hard to do. But the tricky thing here is that when you're letting go, so why is it hard to let go of the premise you're unacceptable? Because it opens you up to uncertainty and potential failure. So in a weird way, you've got a game plan that involves Bobby being unacceptable.
Yeah.
And so the problem, I think, what's really difficult is that you sort of built a party around, let's say like you're playing like an RPG and you like build a party that's like all mages. And then like you built this party and then you've come up with the strategy to like still win with all mages, even though all mages is like generally speaking a terrible party, but also my favorite kind of party to play. And so I come up with these like super convoluted strategies of like, spamming consumables and buying scrolls and stuff early on in the game until my mages actually come online, and then I fucking start tearing things apart. Because you can just CC and like AoE the shit out of anything that comes your way. And this is why you're successful. Because you came up with this sort of like premise that's messed up, but then you also have a lot of faith in when your strategy comes online.
Yeah.
And that's the bullet points, right? Because you're like, let's call me acceptable and let's move to the bullet points, because the bullet points, like, that's when my mages come online. And like, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter that we can't use swords or armor or we have no healers. You guys think that this is busted because you think that you need a tank and you think you need a healer, but I can show you without all this stuff, with my all mage strategy, you can still do it.
Yeah.
So the really tricky thing here is that if you abandon your premise, you also abandon your solution and you abandon your possibility for success. You're re-entering a zone of uncertainty that could lead to failure once again. So I think that's part of the reason you attach yourself to this premise, because at the end of the day, this strategy, Bobby, has worked for you.
Yeah.
So
I want to ask, does it make a difference where, like you said, I can show you that this works, and it's true, I can show you, but not if you don't look. And I've got this other thing about like, you'll never let me show you kind of thing.
Sure, I think
does that change your analysis at all in terms of how I should think about it?
Not really, because I think it's just that's just part of the, it's part of the complex. It's part of the mechanism. So you have a sum scar, but then you also have these other like coping mechanisms that you've created in your mind to account for that. Yes. And I think that like to unravel, so the really tricky thing, so, when I'm just trying to think about this. So one of my supervisors once told me that growing up is the process of abandoning what works.
Yeah.
And that kind of struck me, and I was kind of confused about that. And then, as the more that I thought about it, it's sort of like, well, I mean, when you're 2 and you throw a temper tantrum, like you can kind of get away with that. But as you get older, there are things that you used to do that you have to give up. And like later in life, so for example, when I talk about medical students, so medical students are very, very grades oriented. And that's worked very well for them because they were at the top of their class in high school, top of their class in college. Honors students did excellent, like, have 3.9 GPAs and did really well on standardized tests. And they come to med school and they hit the hospital, and then suddenly it's not about tests anymore. And so they've always tried to be the best. And so then they ask you over and over again, how am I doing? And we say, you're doing fine. You're doing great. Good job. Good job, kid. Good job. And then when grades come around, what grade do you think they get?
I mean, I've had this experience. Not a good one.
So they get an average grade, which is in their mind not a good one. And then they get really fucking confused because they're like, you said I did a great job every day, and I just got an average grade. And then we say, well, yeah, that's because you're average, because we're comparing you with other med students who are also showing up every day and working really hard, and you're now average. And it kind of just blows their mind. So some kids get honors. Okay? And so then the try-hard med, they're all try-hards. They get really confused and they're like, you said I did a great job.
Yeah.
I asked you what I need to do. They don't say it like this because they're too terrified of you. Like, I've spent my whole life with the professor telling me, you need to study this, 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 and this, and you will get an A on a test. And I came here and I asked you, what do you want me to do? You laid out my responsibilities. I've fulfilled every one of those responsibilities. Why don't I get an A? And so what we have to do is teach them to abandon what works. And so what I try to explain to the med students is that, like, it doesn't matter, like, whether, like, I'm not the standard that you should be judging yourself by.
Right.
You're nodding, so it looks like you understood something. What are you thinking?
So I think I'm the person who asked that question directly. And if I don't get the answer that you're giving me, I get very angry.
Yep.
In other words, I feel it's acceptable to give this person an average grade when you've, but then the next thing that you need to say is, okay, the way to get a better grade than average is to abandon what's worked. Like, you need to cultivate. And that's real growth. That's real leadership. And I respect that. That's a good answer. So if I get some dumbass answer like, well, blah, 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 I get very upset.
Yeah, so a lot of times the med students get upset. Thankfully, I've had some years to practice this. And so what I tell them is, like, you should be not thinking about what I want as your supervising physician. You should be thinking about your patient's needs.
Yeah, for sure.
And the kids who get honors are the ones that actually don't, and it's not that they don't care about what I want, they do everything, but their focus is not on the grade, their focus is on the patient.
Yeah. That's my strength, is that my focus is generally on the people who need and that I serve them.
Yep.
But then when it comes to my relationship with the professor, like,
it's contentious.
It's contentious. And
So
I don't
the-
make it easy for the professor. I need to sit and think about that.
So the point here is that, like, Bobby, I think you've got a winning strategy, and just like all of the med students who have a winning strategy that gets them to that point, what I try to impress upon the med students is you're no longer studying for a grade. Like, I don't think you guys get this. One day you're going to be, it's funny, I told this story yesterday. One day you're going to be on an airplane and someone is going to ring a button, like a call bell. You're going to hear an announcement where the air host or the air hostess is going to say, is there a doctor on the plane? And then you're going to be terrified. It's happened to me. It's the most terrifying experience in the world. Scariest thing that's ever happened to me. And then you wait and you cross your fingers because you hope that there's someone else. Right? You hope that someone else does it, and no one does. And they say it again. And then you're like, well, fuck, I got to do this because this is what I trained for.
Yeah.
And you hit the call bell, and then they go over and, they call you over, and then you go, and then like there's a pregnant lady who's like has bad stomach cramps. And then the pilot asks you this question, which is, should we land the plane immediately? That's what you need to be studying for, and that's what you should think about every day when you come to the hospital. Understand, it's not about pleasing me. It's not about knowing the names of your medications. It's that, like, one day someone is going to need your help, and are you prepared for that moment? Because it's fucking terrifying.
Yeah.
Is she having indigestion, or is she having a placental rupture where not only is she losing the baby, but she's going to die within 60 minutes from internal bleeding? Or did she eat too much dairy? And in that moment, you can't say, I mean, my personal fear is I can't say I'm a fucking psychiatrist. I don't know real medicine.
Yeah.
Right? So that's what I'm scared of. And so somewhere along the way, the med students get that it's no longer about the grade and you're actually becoming a doctor, and that people's lives are going to depend on you, even if you're a psychiatrist who spends his time talking to people on Twitch. If I'm on the subway or if I'm on an airplane, like, I can't say, I'm sorry, I spend most of my time on Twitch, I can't help you. Unacceptable. So they have to abandon what works. And what you have to do is abandon what works, and it's going to be terrifying. You have to let go.
And what works in my case?
So you have to let go of your list. You have to let go of your list, and you have to let go of your unacceptability.
Yeah.
So
well, if I let go of the unacceptability, then the list goes too.
Beautiful. Right? But there's a lot of comfort in that whole package for you because that's what's worked. So you have to let yourself potentially fail. And what I mean by potentially fail is you have to give other people their agency back, which you take away from them.
Yeah.
Right? You have to let them, right? So you have to let them be okay with your idea not being okay. That I don't think you can do. So that's something you need to work on, right? So this is, I'm going to go back to kind of the abusive person. So the most terrifying thing for that person is actually like accepting the possibility that this person genuinely loves them. Because if this person treats them abusively and then 5 years from now they leave, the person in the abusive relationship is actually okay with that because they always knew it was going to happen. This is a game I've played before. I can deal with abandonment. I know how to do it. And as long as you hold on to the possibility, as long as you hold on to that idea that I'm not worth loving, it's easy to deal with abandonment. What's terrifying is actually like accepting someone's love and believing that you're not worth abandoning, not like carrying those, putting those walls up, and then the possibility of abandonment. People do not want to do that. They say, I can't take it. If I presume that I'm going to fail at the beginning, I can take a failure. But if I let myself hope and believe that I can be loved and that I can be successful, and then I fail, can't do it. It's going to destroy me. I'm not that strong. So there's something very protective about all of this stuff for you.
Yeah.
Right? It's the same reason why half of our audience doesn't give it their all when they study for a test.
Yeah.
Because if you study for a test and you studied as hard as you could and you get a B, you're fucking dumb. Mm-hmm. But if you're lazy, you get to hold on to being smart because I didn't give it my all.
Yeah.
Giving it your all is the most terrifying thing in the world because then if you fall up short, you're short and there's no excuse.
Yeah.
So I think you've got to give it your all, and I think you've got to let go of control. Couple of other things to remember. One is that I want you to recognize that this samskar exists within you, right? So it's not correct, it's not wrong, it's just a piece.
Yeah.
It's like if you're developing a strategy for Smash, like, there are different characters that have different strategies. It's not like one is the dominant truth, it's just there are different ways to play the game. Mm-hmm. So in your case, you have a 4 or 5 year old that sometimes thinks all this unacceptability stuff like that. And it's going to want to dictate your actions.
Yeah.
As best as you can, as you see that, just notice that it wants to dictate your actions. But that it doesn't, you don't have to let that dictate your actions. Just see it within you. It doesn't mean it's wrong. Right? So like you're in a double bind because you've got one horse that's pulling you this way and one horse that's pulling you this way. Put the horses together. They're still individual horses. They're not different, but you can move in one direction, even though one of them is like, you can have that 4-year-old within you and acknowledge that that person is there and still move forward and still speak and still recognize that I don't have to convince people. I'm going to choose to let go of the unacceptability and also the absolute cheat code, God mode of my logic. I'm going to let go of them both. I'm going to share my ideas and then I'm going to let people, because I know that, there's a part of me that doesn't want to just share my idea. You guys have to listen to all of it. Don't just listen to part of it. Don't judge me halfway.
If I were you, actually, and I love watching your stream because you approach this so differently. You start with your idea. And if I were you, my stream would have been 2 months of me saying okay, I've thought about this. I could have been wrong in this. In other words, I never would have shared my ideas because I would have just shared this extensive case about why you should listen to me, even though you probably, do you know what I mean?
No.
Imagine if you started your stream and you were like, hey, I know that you guys don't spirituality. Let me and you kind of defended this angle. You defended, You're just totally obsessed with why people shouldn't believe you. And you're just attacking these beliefs that you believe could be out there. And then after all that, then you share your ideas.
Yeah. So I mean,
it's such a shit way to talk.
Absolutely.
I do that.
So the reason that
people don't,
I don't, because it doesn't work, right? So this
doesn't work. I can tell you.
So Bobby, let me tell you what I think
I'm
I do.
agreeing with you right now.
Yeah. So I think I don't know that I'm going to help you. I don't know that what you're going to say is going to be acceptable to you. I have no idea. Right? So what I have is a sense of faith in who I am, but I don't have the winning strategy. And not to draw too much of a comparison between the two of us, but I think that's the only thing that works, because I've tried it your way and it doesn't fucking work.
It doesn't.
Is that you be the person that you are, and you let your compass of trying to help these gamers on Twitch, and 60% of people are lonely, and you go to those people, you go to your colleagues at Twitch and you say, hey, I have this idea, I'd love to share it with you guys. And you don't try to convince them, you let them, you know, it's the cake that's in the display case. You're not the person who's giving out samples. You're just going to make your cake, you're going to stick it in the display case, and you're going to let them choose. And if they want it, they're going to have it. You're not the person who's like, hey, would you like to try it? Hey, try this. Oh, put a little schmear of this on this. Why don't you dip it in here? Like, you know, like just take a step back and give what you have to give and let the world receive it. And recognize that there's the 4-year-old, the 5-year-old who's going to be terrified about that. There's all the whole gold nugget and shit. Like, what you need to do is give them a shit cake with a gold nugget on top. Just give it all to them. Don't try to just give them the gold, and don't try to hold back the shit. Just give it all to them. Because they see it all anyway. I know it's terrifying, but I think that there's, like, you're not that manipulative to where you can really hide that much, Bobby. You're not very manipulative. So you're like low on the you're low on the sociopathy scale. Like, your kind of strategy of filtering information and stuff like that works. You just have to be way more sociopathic for that to be a successful strategy for you. The last thing that I'll leave you with is we got to talk about your mom.
Okay.
So another thing, and I don't know that we have to do this today, but one of my supervisors once told me it's the parent that they don't talk. So one parent's the smoking gun, and then there's another parent that they don't talk about. And the money is with the parent that they don't talk about.
There's plenty there's plenty there.
Okay.
It flipped, though. I will tell you, it flipped. If I was 18, I would have only talked about my mom.
Sure.
Not talked about my dad.
Right? So there's a lot about acceptability and who you became to be. And I'm sorry that, you know, it sounds like there were many experiences where you really did just try to be yourself and the world punished you for it.
Yeah.
And I think you just need to recognize that, like, that happened to you. And just because the world has punished you in the past, I mean, there are overwhelming numbers of people who have accepted you for who you are. And yet this some scar has not been processed because, like, it's not, some scars can't fight against each other like that. Like, you were beloved in the Smash community. You know, it's clear that, you know, my Twitch chat likes you. I like you. You're married?
Yeah.
Your wife likes you, presumably. You have a 3-year-old. He's kind of a fan.
He likes me a lot.
Yeah.
He thinks I'm cool.
Yeah. Do you feel unacceptable with him?
Dude, sometimes.
Yeah. So notice that, right? And understand
Yeah,
that's
in the
not
past week for sure. I've noticed it more because that was the practice you gave me.
Yeah.
I do notice it more.
So, but that's not coming from him. It's coming from you.
100%.
Right. So that you
the thing that was said to me yesterday that I think really helped was that it's like at a certain point when I was very young, I chose to have me be the me that my dad saw or that somebody else saw.
Mm-hmm.
And like I had to remember who the me was that made that decision because that me is the one that's, you know, does that kind of make sense?
It makes perfect. So I'll put it to you another way. So I think so some scars and the things that you cope around them are learned behaviors.
Yeah.
So like I think about anxiety. I mean, not all, like sometimes it's, you know, true biological anxiety that wasn't learned, but for a lot of people, especially the kind of anxiety that I see a lot now, it's like a learned anxiety. It's just your brain literally trying to cope or adapt to a certain set of circumstances. And I don't know. I mean, I think you made a choice. I don't know if I would call it a choice, but I definitely think that you can call it a choice. I think it was sort of a subconscious choice, maybe is a good way to put it. But I think you learned to accept your dad's premise about who you are. In the same way that the person who gets into an abusive relationship, who has abusive parents, learned to accept their opinions, like their parents' opinions of who they are.
Mm-hmm.
And so I completely agree. And that's why we got to go back to like where this started, right? And I think, sure, maybe it was the 4-year-old. I think some scars have been kind of added onto. Those are all pieces that are strengthening it.
Yeah.
But there's just this general idea that, like, you know, you're not acceptable, number one. And secondly, that there's something about people that you love and respect being forced to associate with you despite your smell.
Yeah.
You know?
a good way to put it.
And just notice those things. And I'd say, like, Bobby, I think you've got unfortunately a long road ahead of you, but I think, I have faith that you're gonna do well. Not because you have a winning strategy, but because I think you're gonna continue to try.
I'm definitely going to continue to try.
Yeah. Thoughts or questions?
Do you have any I would like to meditate again and have a practice. I kind of
Okay.
did some chanting, but I only kind of do it at home, like when you can hear me. I think that feels really good. Like letting it out as opposed to forcing it is a big difference.
Yep.
Yeah.
Give me a
And
second.
then I also feel like, yeah, go ahead.
Go ahead. No,
I
go
was
ahead.
just going to say, I also, when I've kind of done sort of parts of myself, like kind of thought about what's going on in my experience, I think I actually have like a pretty strong third eye experience when I am understanding something. But the practice of pointing my finger, I never connected the dots between those two places, I guess. And I
Okay.
wonder if there's something there that I could.
Let me just think for a second. Okay, let me just think for a second. I'm going to just take a quick ad break because I've been told to do that and then I just need to think. And then we'll teach meditation when I get, and I need to blow my nose and stuff. So I'm going to just run to the restroom. Let's talk about meditation when I get back.
Cool.
Okay. Ad is still there? Okay, let me think. No ads? Chat, should we do something new or something old? Should we do the same one again? So how do we teach you a meditation about acceptability? Let me think. Do you want something that's a little bit more focused or more contemplative?
So
Like,
I'm quite contemplative is my go-to strategy. So maybe that's not like I'm good at it, but on the other hand, I use it to deal with as a coping strategy, not as a.
Yeah, so I mean, I'm not. I think sometimes when it comes to meditation, the goal is for you to have a practice that's kind of easy for you to do. So we can try to do something contemplative. I'm just trying to figure out.
To be honest, I think that I think that if I could, so there's a place when I was learning how to wave dash. It's like an advanced tech in Super Smash Brothers, where if you're trying to learn something in a video game, you kind of just go into it being like, okay, I'm gonna beat this level. I'm gonna learn how to do this. And it doesn't matter if it takes a week or a month or a year. You're just gonna kind of do it, and you kind of it's like an inner faith or something that you're just gonna keep trying, and it's okay to mess up. And I really love that part of video games. And I'm wondering like if there's a way to kind of right? Like just recommit to being me and not worry about the consequences of being me. That was the thing that you said last time that really stuck with me.
Yeah.
I think I live in the consequences of being me. And so I'm trying to refocus like where my mind is to not 5 seconds after whatever I'm thinking about saying, but just where I, does that make sense?
Yeah. Okay, that's helpful. So I think that we're going to do something that maybe is a little bit different, but let me just think about how to structure this. How can I... How do you feel about breath-oriented meditations?
My breathing sucks. So I feel really good about it.
What does that
I
mean?
breathe very shallowly. I find it very difficult to breathe deeply. I find that I kind of feel like like I don't know if it's gas or whatever, but something will build up when I'm trying to breathe deeply that kind of gets in the way. Then I kind of feel like I have to burp or something, which also doesn't work. I don't know if that's super weird, but
Okay. First thing that I want you to do is sit up straight and close your eyes.
let me get a pillow.
Sure.
Hips above knees.
Yep, very good. Okay. So I'm going to teach you a technique around the double bind, okay?
Mm-hmm.
So I want you to notice but do you have a tennis ball by chance or something that's tennis ball shaped? Can you go grab it?
I can.
Okay. So if you guys have a tennis ball, go grab one. If you don't have a tennis ball, we're going to try to use your fist, okay? So, Bobby, I want you to close your eyes and breathe in and out through your nose. And tell me first if you can discern whether one nostril is more open than the other.
I think my right.
Okay, so go ahead and block your left nostril and breathe in through your right. It doesn't, any finger, it doesn't matter. Yeah, so just block one nostril and breathe in. And then after one breath, switch and then check the other nostril.
Full breath.
Yeah. Just confirm whether you're left gang or right gang.
Maybe left. I don't know. Kind of in the middle. I think left's more clear.
Okay. So then what I want you to do is to take the tennis ball and stick it under your left armpit, kind of up into the armpit, like push it up. Yep. You kind of feel it pressing into your, like, up in there. Okay. Kind of make it almost a little bit uncomfortable, like pressure.
Yeah, it's a little. I feel a little bit of like in the back, kind of.
Okay, so like almost like imagine if you were like leaning with your armpit over a railing. Okay, good. So close your eyes. Now observe your breath. And with each breath, notice which nostril is more open. And then try to catch the transition. So you can put your fist into your armpit if you want. The other thing that you can do is lay down on the, if you guys are watching at home, if that's
switched.
It switched. Did you catch it?
I think it did.
So if it's switched, then move the tennis ball. Other armpit.
Can I confirm it?
Yeah. Switch the tennis ball. Now catch it this time. So the other thing that y'all can do, because the fist can be a little bit awkward, is that you can lay down on the side of your open nostril. So if your left nostril is open, lay down on your left. And if your right nostril is open, lay down on your right. It switched again? Are you catching it?
I think it was between two breaths. Like it was at the exhale.
So I want you to focus at the back or top of your nose, because that's where you may feel the switch. And you're going to get one breath in there with both nostrils open, maybe a couple.
I feel like it's switching really fast. It starts on the side. Yeah, it's switching super fucking fast.
Okay, so now we have your problem, right? So I think this is, so you got it, so you could stop for a second, Bobby. So what I'm going to do, let's try to do it slightly differently. Which one's open now?
Left.
Okay, so I want you to, your couch in the back, I want you to lay down on your left side.
Okay. And just kind of
Just lay down on your left.
as a-
Nope, just lay down on your left side. Yeah, it's very strange that his is switching correctly. So I think this is the right technique for him.
I won't be able to hear you.
Okay, so lay down on whichever side is open, and then watch it switch, and then come back after it switches.
All right.
And try to catch yourself in the middle of the switch. Yeah, it's very strange. It normally does not switch that fast. Yeah, he can relax. Oh, fuck. How do I tell him to put a pillow under his head? Because he looks fucking awkward. Jesus, that looks uncomfortable. He looks so stiff. Poor Bobby. He tries so hard. Okay.
I think I caught it, dude.
Okay, so it was quick? Okay, good. So first of all, you can lay down in a more relaxed fashion. You don't have to keep your head, you could have gotten on a pillow just comfortably.
All right.
Okay.
Okay.
So first of all, it's very unusual that your nadis are switching so rapidly. Usually it takes at least 60 seconds. So, but this also is cool because I think this is the right technique for you. So Bobby, we've been talking about the double bind. What you need to learn how to do is to live in between two things. To live in the tension as opposed to being pulled onto two sides. So there's a tension within you. And I think it's clear to me that you need to live in the space of that transition. So there's going to be one breath in there where either inhalation or exhalation, things are going to be even and balanced before you switch over. So just spend time in the middle of those two things. And what you can also do is this is weird. I've never had someone who switches so quickly. So I don't know that you need to.
I've got a theory about this, by the way.
Go ahead.
I think that I learned very young not to trust myself. So my left and right hemispheric brains don't trust each other. So there's just a bunch of I don't know if that makes any sense, but I just as I think through things, I notice that I switch from what is the meaning and how does this make sense holistically to, well, none of the facts support this. And
Yeah.
it's they're kind of disagreeing and they're fighting all the time.
Right. So you need to find your corpus callosum, which is the thing that connects your two hemispheres. Right. So you need to live in the in-between spaces.
Battleground.
That's so it
war
shouldn't
in there.
It shouldn't be a battleground, right? So what I want you to understand, so imagine that I have two, if I take like two boards and I lean them against each other, those two boards are opposing each other, and you could argue that that's a battleground, right? Because one of them wants to fall this way, the other one wants to fall this way. But when I set them up, there's actually there's no conflict, there's just the tendency of one board and the tendency of the other board are creating conflict and opposition, but in between them, there's actually peace and balance. And you need to start learning how to live in that space, and I think this is a technique that's going to help you with that. Just like you said, if your two hemispheres don't touch each other, fantastic. So start to live in the in-between spaces.
Do you have any idea what that feels like? Could you kind of maybe say a word or two about what it might feel like to live in the tension? And
yes,
maybe I'll
I
just find out.
can, but I'm not going to.
Okay.
So part of this is tricky because I'm trying to teach you sort of a middle technique without the beginning and without the end. So this is sort of the preparatory technique. The main thing, though, is that the other thing you can do is you don't necessarily have to use the tennis ball if you're switching very rapidly. You can just observe your breath and catch the switch naturally.
Okay.
So I don't think that you should have it ping-ponging back and forth so rapidly. So if you want to, have it breathe for a couple minutes and then you want to force a switch, you can. Breathe for a couple minutes and then you want to force a switch, but see if you can catch the natural transition. And when that transition happens, just fully implant yourself in that space with one breath that is both right nostril and left nostril. And then you tell me how it feels to live in the in-between. Okay? Thoughts,
Will do.
questions?
No, it feels good. Thanks
right,
so
man.
much for everything that you're doing, man.
Yeah, man, it's been a pleasure.
I'll
Thanks
make-
for coming on a couple times and also, rescheduling so rapidly.
For sure.
Any thoughts on who we should raid?
I was thinking I would stream, so I mean, if you want to
Yeah, we can just raid you. Let's raid Bobby. Are you streaming?
turn I'm about to. I wasn't because the camera wouldn't let me. You couldn't see me
Go to
while
Bobby.
I was streaming.
Okay.
Twitch_Scar.
All right. Thanks a lot, Bobby. We'll raid you in a few
Thank you
minutes. Okay.
again.
Take care.
Yeah, you too.
Oh wow. Thank you, Mash Stars, for the. How many is that? Holy. 100 gift bomb. Thank you very much for the, gigantic pile of subs. Okay, so for a couple of things to make things so sometimes I struggle on stream because I'm not sure what to teach, because some stuff is very applicable to the person and I think less applicable to Twitch chat. Dodged what? I'm confused. Why does people say dodged? Oh, they dodge the subs. Thanks for the 100 gifted subs, really, Mash Stars. We really appreciate it. So that'll go to, it'll go to fund something or other. So I'm sorry if that, that meditation practice was odd for you guys, because it's very strange that Bobby's switching so rapidly. But if you guys are, if you're struggling in some way and you feel like you're in a double bind, that practice could be good for you too. So this practice is part of something called swara sadhana. Swara means breath or sound, and yoga is sort of a particular set of practices that are sort of designed to get you to enlightenment purely through the breath. And it's different from Vipassana because Swara Sadhana isn't really about doing things with your breath, which is more pranayam. It's about observing nuances of the breath. So I'll give you guys kind of another practice. So if you close your eyes and you pay attention to your breath, you'll feel the flow of air through your nostrils, right? And now I want you to figure out which of your nostrils is dominant. So one of your nostrils is going to be more open than the other. Left gang or right gang? Okay. So now what I want you guys to do, if y'all ready for the next level, this is going to be hard. Left gang, right gang. So if you guys have some practice with this. Now I want you to notice the direction of the breath. Okay? Within your nose. So what I mean by that is... Okay. No. So if you think about your nose like this, right? So here's your right nostril, here's your left nostril, Dr. K, okay? So you can feel, ooh, let's use like a brush or something. Yeah. So you can feel the breath around here, or you can feel it here, or you can feel it here. There's going to be a dominant place where your breath is coming out of your nostril. It's going to be equal both sides very rarely. Does this make sense to anyone? There's going to be one area, like it could be here or here, where you're going to feel the breath more. There are 5 distinct zones. So what you guys want to do is, as you breathe, just notice which zone you're in. Right? So this is tricky because, like, so Swara is hard. It's like a more subtle practice, and it's like really not for everyone, which is fine. Doesn't mean you're bad at meditation. The whole point of teaching different meditation techniques is because, like, some people know what charging the laser beam feels like, and other people are like, I have no idea what that is. And other people, you do left gang, right gang, and they're like, yeah, that makes perfect sense. How do you guys not understand this? So what you guys want to do is just pay attention to the different zones of your nose and just focus on that and try to feel what they are. So what I'll ask you guys is that I'll tell you that there are a certain number of zones in each nostril. So you guys tell me what are the zones of each nostril. So I'll say, let's say 5, okay? So there are 5 directions that your breath can go within each nostril. And try to just try to find all 5 in each nostril. And that's your meditation practice. Right? So it's not so important what it is right now, but so what I want you guys to do is understand, so try to catch all 5 of them. The zones are what you need to figure that out. I'm not going to tell you what they are. And if you guys don't know what I'm talking about, that's actually completely fine. Right? So for those of you who think your 5 head like digital donger, that's just 4 directions, buddy. Where's the 5th? And do this practice, do it throughout the day, because you're not going to, like, does this make sense? Like, if one zone is active, that's the zone that's going to be active right now. You can continue watching the breath, but it's going to be the same part that's going to be active. And so practice it for a while. So listen, guys, I just want to thank you guys again for all of the support and for all the subs and things like that. Our